Welcome in the podcast.
Thank you, Glenn. So good to be with you and to see you again. It's been a couple of years.
It has been a couple of years indeed, and it's a privilege having you on the Over Spreken Gesproken podcast. And obviously, I'm going to say hi from all of our colleagues in Franklin Covey, the Netherlands as well.
Wonderful. Hello to them as well.
As a first question, as of today, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's already a very broad question, so I'll let you feel free to answer it. But looking back on your life, how was it growing up with Stephen R. Covey as your father?
I think it was, I was lucky to have a good dad, right? And a good mom. And I think you have to consider yourself really fortunate if you've got good parents, right? And so I was lucky to have that. But as a kid, I just thought dad was dad. And as a teenager, I thought my parents were kind of weird, kind of out of it, And I remember my dad was he was bald completely, and it was kind of embarrassing. And I didn't really know, how famous he was. And he wrote all these books. And I remember so many times people I didn't know, I'd go to meetings or speeches he'd give, and people I didn't know would come up and hug me and say, "You're Stephen Covey's son? Oh my gosh." They start crying. "Your dad's book changed my life." And I'm like, "Are you serious? My dad wears velour sweatpants with a dress shirt."
I can really imagine it would be kind of awkward being a youngling, right?
Yeah. So it was, he was just dad. He was a good dad. And then when I got older, I remember reading one of his books. The first time I picked up one of his books, I was 19.
Okay.
I started reading it. I said, "Oh my gosh, he's so smart. He's matured so much."
He's matured so much.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you decided to work with your father as well inside of the company?
Yeah, I was in my late 20s. I went to Harvard Business School, and I had an offer from Disney to work at Disney. And
that's not a small company as well, right?
I was excited. I'd worked there before business school, and so it was in Orlando headquarters, and I was excited about that. But then I went and heard my dad speak one time when I was making this decision of where to work. And at the time, it was a business he started, Covey Leadership Center, and I had an offer from them as well. And I remember watching him speak, and he was teaching this big group of leaders, about 250 adult leaders, and he was teaching them how to listen effectively.
Okay.
And they didn't get it. And he kept teaching and trying to teach them how to be empathic, and they didn't get it. And it was kind of almost chaotic. And finally, because he was doing this role play, right, trying to act like a son that didn't want to go to college, wanted to drop out to start to work. And they were trying to respond as parents. And finally, they got it. And they learned how to listen, not with the intent to reply, but to understand. And it was like so revolutionary for these people in the audience. They just said, "Oh my gosh, for the first time in my life, I've learned how to listen." These were experienced leaders. And I was so blown away by what I witnessed in this 2-hour meeting that I thought, I'm working there. So I joined Covey Leadership Center.
Yes.
Which later became Franklin Covey. It's a public company, global public company now. But that's what got me into it, is just kind of that one experience where I was so blown away by the impact of effective training, leadership development.
Exactly. So beside of the content, Stephen Covey was a brilliant speaker as well.
Yes.
But that specific moment with empathic listening really convinced you about that impact of these principles.
It did.
And then is there maybe one specific moment in time when you look back now that you say, hey, this is really a memory that I cherish about our family, aligned to maybe the principles, but doesn't need to be necessarily?
Yes, I remember as a family, my dad got this idea. I was 16, and he said, "Hey, family, we're going to write a family mission statement." And I said, "Yeah, what's that? Sounds stupid, Dad." And he said, "No, I'm serious. This is the idea. The U.S. has a constitution that guides us. Why don't we create one for our family?" We all kind of laughed for a minute. He goes, "I'm serious." And then, so we started that night, and we did this. We'd meet like once a week for an hour, and we just say, hey, what do you think our family is all about? And we came up with a family mission statement, and everyone got to contribute. And it was basically said, I don't remember it exactly, but I'll give you the context. It said, our home is a place where we have fun, relaxation, friendships, renewal. There's like 7 words. I got the word fun in. And so that we can contribute to the world and create our own futures. And it was really, I remember just the feeling of this. It was a kind of a joke at first, then it got serious, and then we came up with a great statement. And it meant something to me as a kid with my brothers and sisters. I was one of 9 kids, and this kind of helped us come together, made us feel like we had a purpose. It made us feel like our home was a place of fun and peace, and where we could invite friends. And it really helped. And my brothers and sisters and I, we're all really close now. We get together all the time. There's no bad feelings. We get over grudges. And I attribute it to that mission statement development as a young kid.
Yeah, wonderful. If you look back now, do you think that creating such a statement, because writing it and living it are 2 different things, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that really helped bonding with that, big group of family? I believe 5 sisters, 4 brothers,
yes,
total, right? That actually helped creating the relationships you have with them right now?
Yes, absolutely. It was writing it and then living it, right? And we weren't a perfect family. We were like every family. We had fights, we had problems, and jealousies and rivalries, but we were good at like trying again. My dad was always good at apologizing. Sometimes he'd lose his temper, especially on road trips. Like people weren't getting ready.
Camping and hiking, such a stuff.
Yeah. Then he'd get in the car and he'd say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken with that tone of voice. I'm sorry, Sean. And he was good at apologizing. We kind of grew up learning to apologize and say you're sorry. So we'd have frequent family meetings, and we'd always learn to say sorry and apologize and try again and set a new goal. And so we're constantly course correcting. But I guess the health of our family was that we had an immune system. We could fight off problems because every family is going to have problems. We could fight off problems because we were committed to getting along in the end.
Yeah. And I really like that choice of words, an immune system as a metaphor to cope with difficult circumstances, as every family has.
Right.
And I'm curious now, Sean, when you are a father as well, is there maybe one thing that you especially don't implement yourself, and you got that as an example from your dad?
So something he did that I don't do?
Exactly.
Well, yeah, this is it. My parents were so slow at like packing to go on a trip. My mom especially. It was just like a huge event to go somewhere, and just it take like a day to pack to go for 4 hours away. So I've committed myself. My wife's really good. We're fast packers. We get in and out really fast in 1 hour. And we're good at it. Because of my terrible memories of taking a day to go somewhere.
And now with the 30th anniversary of the book, you co-authored actually the first part of the book. That's something I can believe when you co-author the 7 Habits and the new edition of it, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it a co-author. I didn't change my dad's words because the book is so good. It's a classic. It's his life's work. But the publisher asked me to add insights, relevant, practical, up to today insights, right? And so I was hesitant to do it when they asked. I said no.
I can imagine.
No again.
I can imagine.
But I said, this is my dad's book. I don't want him to haunt me from his grave, right? But then after a while, I thought, you know what? These habits are so powerful. I want to show the world the impact they've had. So the end of each section, so like habit 1 is called Be Proactive, and he talks about importance of choice and initiative and responsibility. And so at the end of the chapter, I didn't change any of his words. I just said, let me tell you about the impact of this upon an organization in Thailand. Okay, that was big, high-tech equipment manufacturer that was in a big flood. Their whole plant with 30,000 employees was underwater. They were a 7 Habits company. They had studied the 7 Habits, that implemented, trained everybody. And they responded with this proactive approach. It was unbelievable. And got out of this, and everybody else went out of business, and they gained market share and got through this in an incredible way because of this proactive culture that they had. So I tell stories like that, and stories about individuals that were proactive, and just say, you know what, this concept has had such a profound influence upon the world, and I wanted to share that. So that's what I do in the book.
Exactly. So you really gathered different stories nationally and internationally of companies and people that implemented the 7 Habits in the past 30 years then?
Yes, the past 30 years, and just showed the impact of these ideas on the world. Yeah.
Hey, and how are these principles applicable in your own life currently?
Well, I mean, they're very applicable every day. You know, I've got kids. I run a charity, a foundation called Bridle Up Hope. I'm president of a business. So just, you know, constantly I'm trying to be proactive. I develop mission statements and goals, and habit 2, begin with the end in mind. I've learned about the power of synergy. But, you know, right now in the US, we've got a lot of chaos going on.
During the COVID-19 crisis, right?
The corona, and as well as the kind of the civil unrest around racism and such. But for years, we've been saying, you know, habit 6 is called synergy. It's the essence of it is valuing differences, and saying, instead of being threatened by differences, saying whatever differences they might be, whether they're race or background or education or lifestyle, you know, you learn to value people's differences, and it's complementary, and you can get better and stronger if you can learn to work with differences, and everyone adds something to the, you know, to the end result. So, so I try to practice these all the time, and I struggle with them, especially habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. For me as well, I obviously sometimes, right, that you think, especially during crisis as we are having right now, how do you sustain then these rituals and these morning routines that, well, change when all your children are at home as well, simultaneously, don't go to school, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's hard.
So how do you do it?
Everyone struggles with sharpen the saw. It's the idea that greatest asset you have is yourself. You know, they teach you on a plane, if you have an accident, oxygen mask come down, put it on yourself first, right? It's that concept. And when you get really busy, it's hard to do. But what happens over time, if you don't take care of yourself physically, get good sleep, nutrition, exercise, if you don't take care of yourself socially with your relationships, or mentally learning and growing, or spiritually, which is your motivation, right? What really drives you and inspires you. If you don't take care of that, over time, your saw gets dull. Right? You're just not effective, and you kind of get quick with people, and you know, you just don't make the kind of progress you need to. So just taking that 30 minutes, that 60 minutes once a day, you know. So what I do is I get up early, I exercise. Even when I don't feel like it.
What kind of exercises do you do?
I have a Peloton.
Okay, great.
I love it. Or I lift weights.
Okay.
I have Beachbody, and I turn on my Beachbody subscription, and I watch Sergey lift weights, and I do what he does.
Okay.
But I work out. I read. I plan.
Okay.
Take like an hour, and I just really kind of prepare myself for the day, and it makes all the difference for me. That's how I sharpen the saw, and I win that private victory, right?
Yes,
and then it allows me to win the public victories in life later on.
Well, it's inspiring how you implement that principle of sharpen the saw, right? And having that morning ritual every single day. Is that really confession time now? Do you really do this every single day?
I probably do it 5 to 6 days a week.
Exactly. Well, that's something already, right?
Sometimes I skip because I'm just too tired or too overwhelmed, but consistently I always get at least 5 days in, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah. And for people who are listening and don't have any routine right now, but want to create something. I often hear that people think of these brilliant morning routines, but they forget to make small steps. Right.
Yes.
And I really believe that small steps wins from a giant leap. So now and then.
It does.
So what kind of advice could you give the listener who wants to build these habits, but really doesn't know where to start?
Yeah. Well, I'd just suggest, number one, make it your own. You might want to do it at night, in the morning. And then don't start too big. Don't say to yourself, I'm going to work out for 2 hours a day, because you might do it for a week, but it's unsustainable.
Exactly.
Right? And so sometimes I'll say, I only have 30 minutes this morning or 25 minutes. And I'm going to go and exercise. I go and exercise for 10 minutes, really hard. And then I do a little bit of studying and planning, and that works for me. Right. But come up with your own plan and think about the 4 areas of your life. Physically, what do you want to do, this week to help yourself physically and mentally? So see that whole idea of your mental development, learning, growing, reading, that kind of thing. And then socially, it's investing in relationships. And then it's spiritually. And by spiritually, I mean motivation, inspiration. Some people like to go out in nature, listen to inspiring music. Some people like to worship at church, just whatever works for you. But look at it in terms of a week too. Sometimes maybe a day is not the best way of looking at it. You might want to look at a week and just say, throughout this week, I'm going to do these 2 social things. I'm going to go visit grandma. I'm going to have lunch with my spouse. Right. And then physically, I'm going to exercise these 3 times, and I'm going to read this book this week, and doing it holistically like that. But invest in yourself. It's not selfish. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's the best thing you can do, so you can be an instrument to help other people.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just a long-term thing. If you do this over time, imagine the impact of doing this over a whole year.
Exactly. It's built upon each other, right?
A year later, and so I just say start small, doable, something that's sustainable.
Yeah. Great. And what I like what you say is, if you don't have a daily routine, just visit your weekly planning and just make sure you planned in. Well, we know the principle of planning big rocks, right?
Yeah.
But make sure you have just 1 or 2 things per dimension that you take some time to renew and replenish your energy.
Yes.
I like that.
Well said.
Hey, you felt in love, especially with the development for children, right? And being a president for the education practice at Franklin Covey, but also the author of many great books, such as the 7 Habits for Highly Effective Teens. I have here the Dutch book version with me. Actually, Sean, if I would do confession to you,
okay,
obviously, the 7 Habits of Stephen R. Covey is one of the books that made the biggest impact on my life, actually, before I started working for Franklin Covey. But reading your book was more fun, to be quite honest. Maybe I liked it even a bit better with all these metaphors and all these. I have a big imagination, so your books are full of all these great stepping stones to remember.
Yeah.
What was this? Could you share a bit about this transition? You were searching, I can believe, to create your own competitive advantage, and you came to the ideas for the 7 Habits of Happy Teens, kids as well. Could you share a bit about that process, how you came about?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was kind of a serendipity.
Oh, wow.
Right? A happy accident.
Yes.
Sometimes things just aren't planned, and so I didn't plan this. I majored in English in college, so I learned how to write well. And then I was a football player, American football. And so because of that, I was asked to speak a lot at like high schools, hundreds of times over a 4-year period. I probably gave 300 speeches to teenagers in elementary schools. And so I kind of developed this knack for talking to kids, right? And so then just one day my sister said, "Hey, Sean, why don't you write I was writing a book for teens, and she said, "That's a dumb idea." I said, "Maria, I've been working on this for months." She goes, "Why don't you just write 7 Habits for Teenagers?" And just the light turned on. Bang. Exactly. These principles, I know them. They're so powerful. I'll make them come alive for teens. And so I spent 3 years. I was at a full-time job, and I would do this in the mornings and on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
And I got about 300 teens involved.
Wow.
I'd have focus groups around the country and around the world. I'd meet with kids, 15 teens. I'd give them pizza. And I'd say,
that's good motivation.
Tell me about the topic of school.
Mm-hmm.
What stresses you out? Tell me about friends. What works, what doesn't? Read this chapter. Tell me what you think. Look at this cartoon. Tell me what you think. And I got so much feedback from them. And they helped me with the voice. Like the first chapter I submitted to a group of teens, they said, "Stop trying to be young. You're not anymore. You got to change your tone. Just be you. You're okay. We don't have anything against 30-year-olds.
Old people."
Right? And so that's how it came about. So the book is really vetted by teens, and it's fun, like you said, and it's got their stories in it.
Yeah.
Hundreds of stories, their ideas, their metaphors. I mean, this was a real synergistic work. So that's how the whole thing began. And then I wrote one for little kids.
Exactly.
As well. And then, that kind of started the whole Leader in Me business.
Exactly. Because this was before the Leader in Me program, actually.
It was. Yeah, yes. It was. Yeah. So kind of just happened that way. Yeah.
Great. And what was the, what did your father think of the idea? Creating these books for children and teens as well.
He loved it.
Yeah,
he loved it. He said, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, let's do it." And I asked him to help me with 7 Habits Teens, and he goes, "Oh no, you're fine. You never read a word. You never read one thing until it was published." But he always thought it was really cool. He was glad to see that this could be extended because he believed these are principles that you can apply them anywhere, any age.
It's universal, right?
A 5-year-old or a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So he always thought it was really cool.
Nice. Hey, and Sean, I can understand that if I listen to the participants that follow my courses, one of the most given questions or comments is, "Oh, I wish I would have known this when I was a kid." Or, "Oh, why don't we teach this on schools?" This is really a common given question or comment. And then I say, well, actually, we do.
Yeah.
And only in the Netherlands, we have more than 125 schools, elementary schools, that use the 7 Habits as a foundation to build their education.
Yes.
People don't know about that fact.
Right.
And so I'm really happy that we share this message to our listeners. Could you share a bit, what's the Leader in Me program about, and how did it was created?
Yeah. So Leader in Me program is basically teaching leadership to kids. And it was, again, serendipity how it started. There was a school, a public elementary school that had 27 languages spoken in Raleigh, North Carolina. So transient area. And the school was failing and not doing very well. And they were a magnet school, meaning the school was supposed to have a theme to attract students, right? And the principal, Muriel Summers, was told that they were going to shut down the school because it was doing so poorly. She's desperate. Goes to a seminar by Stephen Covey and says just what you just said, Glenn. Why these 7 habits are so powerful. Why do we wait till we're adults to learn these? I'm going to apply them at my school. Maybe this can save us. So she went back and she created what she called a leadership theme in her school. She said, we're going to teach the kids the 7 habits. We're going to teach them leadership. We're going to teach them how to set goals. We're going to teach them how to speak in public and teach them how to get along, how to resolve conflicts. In addition to reading, writing, math, and science, we're going to teach them these powerful leadership skills. And so she's got her whole staff on board, and she said, first, we're going to live this ourselves. We're going to model this because we don't get along that well. Let's admit it. So they developed a mission statement. The mission was develop leaders. Our mission is to develop leaders one child at a time. And they got on board as a staff, and they got their kids on board. Within 3 years, it became the number one magnet school in the country out of thousands. Number one.
Wow.
Lots of poverty in the school, 27 languages spoken, just blew everybody away.
Mm-hmm.
I visited the school, could not believe what I saw and felt. These kids were excelling academically, leadership-wise, with their families, made a huge difference in the community. And so that's how it began. They were the first leader in me school, and then it just immediately spread throughout the whole world. And and it's in every country around the world. And basically, it's not a cookie cutter approach at all, but a school just adds these leadership principles and all the paradigms behind it, like the idea of every child can be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Change starts with me. Our job is to empower children to lead their own learning, not to control it, right? These powerful paradigms are in the program,
mm-hmm.
and it's really amazing what it can do for a school. It improves the culture of the school. It's a place that makes it feel better to be at.
Mm-hmm.
It improves the leadership skills of the adults in the school and the kids. And then as a result, it helps the academics, right? It aligns the systems. The kids set goals around academics, and schools improve academically. So that's how it began. And it's just been amazing because they're based on these principles. They're applicable everywhere. So we have schools up in China, we have schools in India, all throughout Asia, all throughout Europe. We're really excited that we've got 125 schools there in the Netherlands. It's a place I've visited many times. I've seen the schools, and I'm so impressed. It seems like the Dutch always do everything better.
Why is that?
I don't know.
I don't believe that.
They're good at everything. I always tell my kids, I don't know what it is, but they're good at everything. And they know they're good at everything.
That we're too bold. Yeah,
we're bold. But you guys have taken this program to whole new levels. I love what you've done with it. And again, so this is so Leader in Me is in 5,000 schools now, and our vision is we should get to 100,000. Every child deserves this.
Yeah, that's a new wildly important goal, right? To go to implement this in 100,000 schools all over the world.
Yes, that's it. That's the vision, because that will be a tipping point.
Yeah,
that will influence education across the world. Montessori has influenced education, right? And they've been around 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We think this has an opportunity to be bigger than that, more impactful than that, for the purpose of, and our intent is good. Our intent is to help these kids. This is, when I first saw this in a school, I thought, this is penicillin. My goodness, I've discovered a wonder drug. And this needs to be in every school in every country and across the globe.
And it's ecological, right? With all these kids who are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. And I don't get me wrong, and don't say that it doesn't exist, but the epidemic, right, that we see on schools, that's really troublesome. And you already mentioned the framework, right? Leadership, culture, and academics.
Yeah.
And it's not that you want to get rid of the exact different studies as well. Academics is important as well, right? It's synergistic. It's aligned. There's a sequence.
Yes.
Could you share with us, why are these three pillars, these three stepping stones, so important? Actually,
yeah. Well, they're vital because there is a career skills gap across the world, and it's because we've been in the industrial age for so long, and now we're in this knowledge worker age, where suddenly, reading, writing, math, the basics are necessary and insufficient. They're insufficient because of the social, emotional skills that you need now to survive and to thrive are so important that without them, you cannot be in the workforce and be effective. Everywhere we go, we hear this. I was in India talking to officials there, and they were saying, we're graduating all these students, even from college, and they're ill-equipped to work in the workforce. And big companies were saying, these kids don't know how to get along well. They've got engineering degrees and they've got bad manners. They don't get along well. They're not self-starters. They're not responsible. And so these social emotional skills are so important, you know, and by that, I mean things like goal setting, being a self-starter, taking initiative, planning, managing your time well, right? Resolving conflicts with people, valuing differences in people.
So foundational to achieve results, right?
How to social etiquette, how to meet and greet people, how to speak in public. These are so vital. So we're not doing anything to take away from the academics. It's just the opposite. It's if you will install this, if you get a better culture, watch what happens to your teaching, the effectiveness of it, right? And the outcomes of the kids. If the kids have leadership skills, guess what? We find that attendance increases. We've got all kinds of studies that show this, prove this. And we find that behavior improves. Less discipline problems, less expulsions from school, less having to go to the principal's office. I mean, dramatically. That's the first thing we see in Leader in Me schools is that behavior increases. You get more engagement from parents, more involvement from parents. I mean, all these key factors go up when you improve the culture, improve the leadership, and as a result, academics improve. But it's an ecosystem, like you said.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, Sean, and maybe we can solve this question, but why is this not status quo yet?
Yeah, it's just that there's so many opinions. There's so many different views of things, right? And so we're kind of taking a grassroots approach, and we're trying to not run faster than we have strength, you know, and but you know, our goal is when we started a few years ago, we had one school and then 50, and now we have 5,000, and we'll probably bring on 2,000 more this year.
Wow.
Across the world.
Even though the crisis and this current situation, this is going to move forward either way.
We brought on 1,000 this last year during Corona.
Wow.
And it's really exciting to see. I mean, and we have it in schools that are doing really well, and in schools that are really, really challenged. We have schools in Brazil, for example, that we visited there, and they had bullet holes along their wall from drive-by shootings that happen frequently.
No kidding.
In a real poverty-stricken area, where kids, instead of getting under the desk because of an earthquake, they get under the desk because it's a drive-by, right?
Sure.
And it's just so touching to see these kids learning about setting a personal mission statement and setting a goal to go to college, and learning that I'm responsible. I can make a choice. You know, it's just powerful. It's better than, you know, that you want to feed the kids, and you want to give them also, you want to teach them how to fish, not just give them a fish. This is teaching kids how to fish.
I really get inspired hearing you say that. And the kids are the future, right? So if you look a little bit closer to my heart, and if we talk about contribution, you really contribute to so many families in the future. If we can help them not only becoming smart, but becoming leaders themselves, personal leaders.
Yeah, well, I'm trying, just like you are, Glenn.
Exactly. Yeah, one school at a time, right? One school at a time. Yeah. Could you share a bit more about the current challenges in education, maybe worldwide? I'm thinking about the digital revolution as well. Is Leader in Me thinking about those challenges as well? And what do they do about it?
Yes, I think I mentioned the career skills gap, right? Major challenge for primary education and secondary education. Another one is the digital revolution, because teens today, I don't know the exact stats in the Netherlands, but in the U.S., the average teen spends 35 hours a week in front of a screen. Imagine that, and you don't. Of course, that has implications, right? And I think it contributes to anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD, so many things, and that's a big challenge. And so, yes, we try to take on all that, because the Leader in Me is a holistic program, right? And we're trying to. It really involves parents a lot as well. We try to teach the parents the 7 habits also. Our best schools do a really good job of it. When my kids go to a Leader in Me school, and my young kids, and I teach the parents every year. They've asked me to do it, and I train all the parents. And we spend a lot of time on how to manage your phones and developing family contracts around you're not overdoing it, right?
Yeah,
like that.
So it's not only about the principals and the children, it's also about their private community as well.
It is, right? Anxiety and depression is a trend, right? You see
on the young kids currently, teenagers, right?
Teenagers especially. Yeah, it's a growing epidemic across the United States, across the world for that matter. So this addresses that directly too, because if kids can learn resilience, right, that's the key thing, and learn this, what we call grit, right? They used to think it was IQ, and they figured out it was EQ, and now they're saying, no, it's grit, it's perseverance. And so the Leader in Me teaches, and the 7 Habits teach resilience. I'm responsible. I can make changes. I can get over things, right? I can solve problems. I can balance my life. It teaches us resilience, and that's what we need to take on anxiety and depression is resilience. And one other thing is burnout of the adults in the school, right? And the great thing about Leader in Me, as you know, Glenn, is it's as much about the adults in the school as it is the kids. In fact, that's why it works. You go in and you say, hey, you know what? We're going to teach you the 7 habits. This is about you first.
Yeah, there's a sequence actually, right? First, the teachers and the parents need to go through the assessments and through all the content before they move on to the children, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that's what Leader in Me does. It starts. People always say when they go to the first training of Leader in Me, the teachers will say, "Oh my gosh, I thought this was about the kids. This was about me. That was the best professional development I've ever had." You say, exactly. You need to get your own act together and improve your own life and sharpen your own saw and learn to get along with your own colleague. And the children will feel that, right? They'll feel it when they come to school, and you'll teach the 7 habits with power and authority because you're trying to live them yourself. So those are big trends I'm seeing. Just in summary, teacher burnout and how the need for them for self-care, right? That's one key thing. The digitization of everything and the need to learn to balance that and to have family contracts, because that can just overwhelm children, right? The global skills career gap, big problem, right? And then I think anxiety and depression. And when I look trends across the world.
When I look back on the teachers that I had a couple of wonderful teachers, but to be honest, most of them, well, if we talk about model the principles, right? Model first before you reinforce them. Well, if you talk about proactivity or begin with the end in mind, well, nothing of that. So I really understand that it's so important that we challenge ourselves first and then lead by example before we start teaching these principles to children as well. Hey, I can understand, maybe emphasize with a principal that is listening to this and say, hey, this sounds awesome, right? Maybe they're curious how they practically, how they can start this process. Could you share a bit more practically about the process? How do you implement the Leader in Me in all these schools?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, we find that it's usually the decision of the principal or the headmaster or the leader of the school. Oftentimes it's a decision of the district leader, the person that oversees a lot of schools. And sometimes it's, a whole big chain of like private schools or charter schools will start it. But what we typically find, Glenn, is that it usually starts with one person. It's a principal who reads the book and goes, oh my goodness, we need this in our school. We're going to do this. And they get their staff on board. Or often it's a parent who will read the book or learn about it. And they pick it up and they'll go and go to their headmaster or the principal and say, hey, have you thought of this, right? It's usually a catalyst. Sometimes it's we've had like a member of the Chamber of Commerce, right? A community member that says, we had this in Kentucky where they said, you know what, we need this to help develop our workforce for the future because we're not attracting companies. Okay. And so it was a long-term 20-year plan that we're going to teach leadership throughout our 57 schools, right? And is funded by the business community completely. So it's all over the place. In Brazil, there was a big company there that is the leader of education that learned about it and said, we're going to take this to all of our schools. So there's 800 of them now in Brazil doing this. So it happens in different ways, but just don't, if you're just a parent listening to this or teacher, you could have a lot of influence. I just encourage you to get the Leader in Me book, get the Dutch version, and or the English version, either. That's the great thing about Dutch. They speak English perfectly too.
We learn English as well, yeah. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. But buy the Leader in Me book.
It's a great way to learn about it. You can go to the website as well and learn about it. But it's something that can be influenced by a teacher, by a principal, by an educator, or by a parent.
So it's also understanding that you, and then we talk about the listener or me, we can be a transition person if you want to. And that's really inspiring of your story. That what was the name of the principal that started this whole revolution?
Yeah, her name is Muriel Summers.
Muriel Summers.
She's still at her school that started this 20 years ago.
She's still teaching leading the school.
Yeah, she has hundreds of visitors every year to come see what she's doing from all over the world.
Wow.
Just because you can feel culture. You walk in the school and you see self-confidence of the kids. They all have their data notebooks. They carry them around. It's these. You say to a second grader that's 7 years old, show me your leadership notebook. Well, this is my academic goal, and this is my personal goal, and here are all my scores, and here's my personal mission statement, and here's my service project I'm working on. And they own their education.
Wow. Talking about taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
About your own learning capacity as well. That's really great. Hey, and Sean, your influence doesn't stop only being a president for the whole education programs worldwide, but you also expand your influence via the Bridal Up Hope Foundation. You already named it, right?
Yes.
And through the family of Alma here in the Netherlands, we have Bridal Up Hope also here in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And well, unfortunately, there's a story that is the foundation for this organization or vision. Actually, could you share a bit of what would you like to share about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, so sometimes life throws you curveballs, right? You can't expect. And we, when my daughter Rachel, my oldest daughter, was 21, she passed away in a unfortunate accident. She suffered from depression and anxiety a lot. She found great comfort in riding horses. And that's what she loved to do. And after she passed away, we had a few of her friends, some of which I didn't know, came to me and said, you need to know that I'm here today because of your daughter. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I was really messed up, doing bad things, unhappy. She started taking me on trail rides on her. She had 2 horses. She'd go on one and I'd go on the other. And it just like changed me. Just being in nature and being quiet and being on a horse just changed me. And so we got this idea of starting a foundation in her name. It's called Bridal Up Hope, the Rachel Covey Foundation. And basically we take girls that are struggling in any way they might be. And there's, like I said, there's an epidemic of anxiety and depression across the world. And we put them through this program where we teach them how to ride a horse, take care of a horse. We teach them the 7 habits, to teach them resilience. And we have them also serve at the barn by taking care of the horses and feeding them. So they're serving and giving back. And we started this, and it worked so well with the first 5 girls that did this, like life-changing. Their parents came to us and said, she's a different person. Thank you for giving me my daughter back, right? And so we started this, and it started growing. And And then eventually we started a foundation, 501c3 nonprofit. And it's amazing what this does, Glenn. We'll take a girl that maybe has been bullied. We had one girl that was in a bad accident. She got scarred on her face.
Okay.
Her parents were killed in the accident. She was bullied because of these scars, and she just lost all hope, wouldn't come out of her room. We get her onto this program. She doesn't want to be there at first. She starts getting on the horse. A week later, she's a little bit different. 14 weeks later, she knows the 7 habits. She knows how to take care of a horse. She's 100-pound body, running on this massive 2,000-pound beast, and she's in control. She's like a different person. Changed her life completely. So we started getting a vision for this. We thought this should be in every country in the world, every state in America. And so I'm over in the Netherlands a few years ago, and the person that drove me to my speech, I was speaking at a national education society event, Alma Batenhays. She picked me up. She's a 7 habits person. She's certified to teach, and she loves horses. By the time we got to the speech an hour later, she was our next chapter of Bridle Up Hope. And she's a wonderful lady, and her daughter and her family, they run Bridle Up Hope Netherlands. And they've really impacted some girls. It's just terrific stories of girls that are really suffering, that are different people now because they've learned resilience, and horses are the magic.
Yeah.
Right? Something about a girl and a horse. There's a lot of science behind equine therapy and what it does and how good it is. But we've added to it these habits and the service element. And so now we've got another big vision to take this to 1,000 locations throughout the world. And we have 5.
Okay.
We'll probably start about 8 more this summer, and then we'll start going about 50 a year after that. So,
wow, 1,000 Bridle Up Hope locations, 100,000 schools that implement the Leader in Me. That's quite an impact, Sean.
We're trying.
Yeah. And would you like to share, and maybe it's all underlined, your own mission statement with us?
Yeah, well, I won't tell you exactly what it is because it's kind of personal.
I can imagine.
But in essence, it's just to, it's basically to carry on what my father started. His vision was principles govern. And if you live your life according to principles, and by principles, I mean just natural laws, things like responsibility, hard work, service, love, balance, right? If you follow these principles that we know intuitively, right? We know that they're right. If we follow these, you succeed. And so he called it principle-centered leadership. So my vision is just to spread principle-centered leadership throughout the world, through organizations, through families, through schools, through books, through Bridle Up Hope. And because I think it's powerful, and I feel blessed to know what it is, and just want to share it. And that's what motivates me. And as I've gotten older, as a kid, my favorite thing was to throw a touchdown pass, right, in American football.
Yeah.
And then it was fun making money, and then it was fun achieving something. But I get a kick now out of nothing is more satisfying to me than helping someone that's suffering, helping someone that's in need. And it gives me that's what motivates me now. I get my biggest kick out of that. And so that's kind of where I am. And so I feel like, boy, if we can, with today's, all the negative things going on across the world, we need something like this, right? We need to have positive forces combating all the negative things going on. And so I hope to be on that positive side.
And you already are. You already are. And I really think this is inspiring also for the listeners, hearing how you not only continue sharing the story of your father, but also, transforming it for the better. But I can really understand, sometimes it can also be difficult to be the son of Stephen Covey, right? That's the silly thing that you have a working life for over 30, almost 40 years. right? And then I can imagine that sometimes you think, not again. And we love it, and we believe in these principles, but still, right? I can understand that sometimes it can be difficult. Is that true?
Yeah. I've never really felt this weight of being the son of Stephen Covey or comparing myself to him, because I think it's probably because he was so good at not doing that. And he'd always just say, "You just be your own self. You don't have to be me. Be your own version of yourself, and have your own mission, and detect your own purpose. You don't need to be me. And if you don't want to work it with me, that's fine. I believe in you." And so I don't feel that at all. I feel like I'm doing this by choice, and I don't feel this pressure, because I remember him always saying, you get up in speeches and say, "Hey, you probably ought to read the book. I'd recommend you read my son's.
Oh, wow.
It's better, and it's got cartoons." And I think it's better to myself. So, he was very abundant. And anyway, so I think myself and my three brothers, we feel affirmed by my father, not compared to.
Exactly.
So I think he created that.
So in terms of personal credibility, well, then you develop your own capacities, right? You develop from the inside out, from your own character.
Yeah.
So it's, luckily, then coming back to the first thing you said in the interview, luckily that you got Stephen as your dad.
Yeah, right. I'm so lucky.
Sean, we have time for one more story on your side before we go to wrap up.
Okay.
And you may pick a story that you would like to share with the listeners, but if I would pick one, you share the story of your son Nathan in the 30th anniversary book as well.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to share that, because it's an illustration of the idea of paradigms. That we all have a lens through which we see the world.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we have to examine it, because sometimes they're off. The lens is wrong. And the best way to change your life sometimes is to change your lens and see differently, right? So, and you learn a lot about paradigms as parents, right? When you're raising kids, because it's hard. You never know what kind of kid you're going to get and how they turn out, and they're all different. But when my son Nathan was a young kid, Nathan is now in college, just started last week.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. But when he was a kid, he was so shy, it was dangerous. And my wife and I were really concerned. We couldn't get him to go to school. Every day was a struggle. Sometimes we would have to literally just dress him, carry him into the car, carry him into the school and drop him off. And then he would run away, and the principal couldn't find him. And it was really hard. I remember one time going to school and just saying, I don't care. He's got to learn, be resilient. So I was at school. He's in second grade. I'm trying to tear him off the seat in the parking lot because he was clutching to it, one finger at a time, Nathan, you're going to school. I picked him up, threw him over my shoulder, started carrying him in, met the principal in the parking lot, gave Nathan to the principal, who started carrying him in, and he was hitting the principal in the shoulder. I got in the car and cried, because I was just so traumatized by the whole thing. Then I got him to in second grade to try out for the baseball team, right? Which is a big chore. He arrives at baseball practice for the first time. We get out of the car. He sees the coach and the other players. The social anxiety is so great that he falls on the ground and plays dead.
Oh boy.
You know how they teach you to play dead when a bear attacks you? Well, he thought, I don't know what to do. He's so scared.
The primitive brain just went.
He lays there and wouldn't respond. I said, Nathan, what are you doing? He just laid there. I went and got the coach. I thought maybe if he meets the coach, he'll be okay. And the coach came over and said, hey, Nathan, Coach Jones here. How you doing? Nothing. Hey, you're okay. Just get up and I'll introduce you to other players. And nothing. Just laid there, no response. Laid there for an hour. Practice ended. He got up, went in the car. I take him home and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Nathan he's a problem. I was thinking my paradigm was he's insufficient. I got to protect him. I don't know if he's going to make it. I don't know if I believe in him. My wife kind of felt the same. So a few months later, I'm at a football game watching college football team. Nathan's sitting by me. He's being really annoying. He's kicking the seat in front of him. The guy turns around and says, "Hey, could you please control your kid?" Really upset at Nathan. I reach over and I squeeze his arm, as parents sometimes do.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "Stop it," in a really mean voice, right? And I looked over and I saw him just wilt from my anger, just kind of like this, right? And I felt, at that moment, my conscience spoke to me, and I felt such a sense of guilt and shame, and like the feeling in my heart was, how dare you treat him that way? I got this sense, do you have any idea who this kid is? And the greatness in him? And for you to treat him with that tone of voice and to think of him the way you're thinking of him, that he's insufficient. This all just flooded into my mind in just about 20 seconds. And I sat back, and it was such a powerful epiphany, because it was kind of contrary to what I was feeling about it. It was contrary to everything I'd been taught about people and potential. And I just caught myself. I said, "What are you doing, Sean?" And I went home and I shared with my wife my experience. And I said, "You know what? My sense is he's got greatness in him. He's going to be fine. He's going to work through this. And we've got to think differently about him." So both of us just kind of made up our minds that, hey, Nathan's going to be fine. He's going to grow at his own pace. We're not going to make him feel bad. We're not going to punish him for his shyness. And then I started working with him. I said, "Nathan, let's turn your weakness into a strength." And he said, "I want to, Dad. I just get so scared around people." So he starts making small improvements. 4th grade, he's going to a Leader Me school. They ask him to speak at Leadership Day. 250 people.
His worst nightmare, probably.
His worst nightmare. Comes home, "Dad, there's no way I'm speaking. I want you to call the teacher. They asked me to speak because you're the 7 Habits guy. I'm not doing it." And for a moment I thought, well, maybe he'll get up and play dead. Maybe I should call. Yeah. But I thought, I'm not doing one thing. He can do this. So I didn't make a call, and I didn't know what Nathan would do. But then I quietly watched as he prepared his own speech. And he got up 2 weeks later in front of 250 people, gave a great speech. During the middle of the speech, he paused, got really scared, and it was like a moment of truth, right?
Yeah.
And then he caught himself and carried on, finished the speech.
Oh, thank God.
Got a big ovation. The principal went up and hugged him afterwards because she knew what an accomplishment it was. And he came home and he thought, I can speak in public.
There was a switch in his head.
There's a switch. Wow. And I'm telling you, all of a sudden he volunteered for 2 other opportunities to sing in public and to speak again. And he started just going like this. And he became, through the next few years, he became the most outgoing, non-shy, life of the party, compassionate. He had a lot of compassion for people because what he'd been through. And he just has got this great vivacious personality now.
Wow, we would not remember him aligned to this story.
You wouldn't. You'd meet him today, and he's the most outgoing guy you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And it was really a neat experience. And today he's in college and doing great. It was a neat experience just to see the impact that it had of shifting our view of him.
It becomes with believing, right? It becomes then on your side. And I really think now of a quote of Stephen Covey himself, seeing the potential so clearly in others that they come to believe it themselves.
That's the quote, Glenn. That's it. He'd say, leadership is communicating to another person their worth and potential so clearly, they come to see it in themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what we did as parents. And we had to catch ourselves because we were part of the problem, right? We were perpetuating his insufficiency by us seeing him that way also. And so that's such an important lesson about paradigms. And that's what the habits do. They teach you that, no, you don't have to be a victim anymore. Be proactive. It's a paradigm of you're responsible for your own happiness or unhappiness. Or think win-win. You don't have to be competing all the time. There's a better way to approach relationships in life, which is I want to win and I want you to also.
Yeah.
That's a new way of thinking, right?
Totally.
Or seek first to understand that if you really want to influence people, start listening, not talking more. You're not going to influence by talking more. You're going to influence more by listening more, understanding them more. Then they'll listen to you. Right? So these paradigms are so powerful.
And that's why it's still relevant, right? That's why it stays relevant, probably. Because if we are able, and I think this is really a great end note to the listener, challenge yourself. What paradigm do you have about yourself? What do you see if you do some soul searching? If you look around you, do you see the potential in the children, in the stakeholders, in the family around you? Because if you're able to make that shift, that proactive shift, your results will not be aligned to the conditions anymore. They're aligned to the decisions that you make.
Yes.
Daily, right?
Yes, exactly, Glenn.
Sean, I want to thank you so much for your inspiration. And we're going to wrap up this interview. But not before I ask you the on-spot questions. And these on-spot questions are short questions that I ask every person in the interview. And if you could just reply short and brief. The first thing that pops up in your mind is okay. Ready?
Sounds good. Can't wait.
What is the book you've given the most as a gift, or that that inspired you the most? And it cannot be a Covey book.
Okay. I give a book called The Message. It's a message about if someone has lost somebody to death, someone that's died. It's a powerful, inspiring book called The Message. And it's about life after death, and it's about healing. And so I share that all the time. I have a whole bunch of them, and anytime somebody loses somebody, I give it to them.
And it's authored by?
It's authored by Lance Richardson. Richardson, called The Message. You can get it on Amazon.
Exactly. We noted it down. Thank you so much. What's the myth about education that we all need to get rid of?
That education is just about academics. It's also about social emotional skills.
Word. If you could have one gigantic billboard, Sean, anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
It's all going to work out.
I like that one. Imagine fear would not play a role in your life anymore. What would you do differently?
I would get the 7 Habits of Happy Kids book and create a cartoon series on Netflix.
Oh, wow. Maybe this is a cliffhanger. I think this is a good idea, actually. What is your biggest idol or inspiration?
I think I would say Jesus Christ from the Bible.
Nice. You may put one song in the podcast jukebox. What song would that be?
It would be We Are the Champions.
Queen. Like that one. Yes, is that your pump up song?
It has been since 1974.
Great. I will definitely put that in the playlist. People can view it on Spotify, actually. The last question, the closing question. If you could give the younger listener of this podcast one advice, what would be a great first step for their own development?
Obey your parents.
No. That's a shitty advice. No,
I'm not. I'm just giving. I'm giving you. I'm actually saying that's probably what I wouldn't say, because they wouldn't listen to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say, really, I'd say start writing in a diary or a journal at a young age. Write down your thoughts, ideas. Can be a life-changing experience. It changed my life in 7th grade, learning to write in a journal.
That's a very practical advice, and I believe people will follow up on that. Sean, thank you so much.
Glenn, so good being with you. Appreciate you very much, and wish you and your family and your company success.
Thanks.
I'm a Netherlands fan. I remember cheering for your soccer team a few years back when they were taking on. I thought, how does a small country competing with the world, and you guys were crushing everybody? It was great. I'll always cheer for the orange.
Oh, great. But not anymore, but hopefully in the future, right? Hopefully in the future. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life again in the future. Thanks.
Likewise. Okay, Glenn. Thanks. Take care. See ya.
See ya.